The imagery of bearing fruit in the Bible comes from agricultural terms. When a plant bears good fruit, that means that the conditions in and around the plant are conducive to producing something worth using or eating. However, a plant can produce bad fruit. In that case, the conditions within the plant were incapable of creating something worthwhile. Let's rock. Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. Just a quick note before we begin. Amazon has rolled out new storefronts, and I got mine started. Now, it's not finished yet, but I have a couple of lists created already. And this is a way you can support the channel with your everyday purchases. So if you click on my storefront link and make a purchase, I will earn a small commission and you don't pay anything extra. So keep checking back as I add new lists. And the link, as always, is in the show notes. Now, what does it mean to bear a burden? One of the main purposes of the Warrior Words podcast is to acknowledge our suffering and to discover the beauty within it or arising from it. And bearing a burden is another way of saying that we acknowledge and accept our sufferings. But maybe it's perhaps a more common or universally accepted way of saying it. Now, switching gears just a little bit. What does it mean to bear fruit? So while bearing a burden is a universally common phrase, bearing fruit tends to be more scripturally based. Now, of course, it's not exclusive to Scripture, but it does appear in many places in the Bible. The imagery of bearing fruit comes from agricultural terms. When a plant bears good fruit, that means the conditions in and around the plant are conducive to producing something worth using or eating. However, a plant can produce bad fruit. And in that case, the conditions within the plant were incapable of creating something worthwhile. Jesus said in Matthew 7:16, "You will know them by their fruits." So if the conditions in the plant are healthy, such as the right amount of water, the correct nutrients in the soil, a good amount of sun, lack of destructive weeds and insects, and careful care from a gardener or farmer, the plant will bear good fruit. But if any of those conditions are not met or are removed, chances are more likely that the plant will either bear bad fruit or remain barren. I think a lot of times we take our produce for granted that, when we enter the grocery store, it'll be there just sitting on the shelf, all fresh and delicious. And maybe we take that for granted in ourselves and others as well. But it's not a given that each of us will bear good fruit. In fact, Sister Jude Andrew of Opening Light Media said, "Bearing the burden is the necessary condition for bearing fruit." Let me say that again. Bearing the burden is the necessary condition for bearing fruit. So when we think about our sufferings and the beauty that can be found within or arising from them, I think that's exactly what Sister Jude Andrew is saying. The burden must come first. There must be suffering. And Jesus said in John chapter 12, verse 24, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. So a seed must be buried in the earth, die as it is, before something more beautiful, more fruitful can grow from it. Jesus is the first fruit. He died and was buried, but he rose and is now glorified. And in order to share in that glory, we must also suffer like he did. We must die to our human selves. So in our suffering, in bearing our burdens, we are also able to bear good fruit. So one of my questions about this was, why is the same word used in bearing burdens and bearing fruit? It seems on the surface to be both negative and positive. But when I looked up the definition on dictionary.com, the sixth definition down said, anything that carries weight or offers support. And that helped. Because when we are bearing burdens, we are carrying the weight of that circumstance or that suffering. And when we are bearing fruit, we can do that due to the support offered by our internal conditions. Jesus said in John 15, verse 5, I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Jesus is that internal support. It is Jesus that helps us bear our burdens. It is Jesus who helps us bear fruit. So stay connected to the vine. And one more thing before I end. We can help each other bear burdens. So from that also means we can help one another bear fruit. So how are you helping someone bear a burden? Can you listen to a friend? Help a single mom repair something in her home? Carry someone's bags? Give your seat up for someone else? Donate time or money to your favorite charity? Send a text or even a handwritten note? Pray for someone who is struggling? What other ways can you bear someone's burdens to help you both bear good fruit? And remember, if you're on YouTube or Rumble or on Spotify, you can leave me a comment and answer that question with your own thoughts. I would really appreciate that. So that's your something to think about this week. Also, if you haven't left a review for the show, would you take a minute and sign into your Apple account and leave a 5-star written review? It's simple. Just scroll down to the ratings and reviews section, click 5 stars only if you mean it, and write a quick sentence or two about how the show or a specific episode has impacted you. Now, until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.